Kia ora and welcome. My name is Ellen Rose and this is the Creative Cure to Boredom. I've created this channel to explore and share some creative approaches to art using everyday materials you'll be able to find in your own home. The hope is that it makes the current lockdown and isolation a little bit more bearable. Today we're going to have a bit of an explore of using coffee as a watercolour, and I'll stop and start to explain a few of the things that I'm doing in between. But please do add comments below or request certain materials below. I'll be happy to give them a bit of a try. Cheers! So all I'm doing here is I'm putting some coffee in some little cups and I'm adding some hot water to it. So I've decided to use hot water instead of cold water in the hope that it can dissolve easier. And I've just used a greater ratio of coffee to water in the first one than I have in the second. And as you can see, the first one is giving a much darker brown colour, whereas the second one is a much lighter brown colour. So I start the artwork by doing some really basic outlines to get some of the shapes that I'm going to want to detail later on. So here I'm just going back into the ear and just creating a little bit more of the dark shadows that you can see in there. This will help me pick up that form. And I'm just sponging with a little bit of a tissue there. I've just gone a little bit too dark on the eye, on the side of the face, so I've just cleaned that up. This is just about blocking in some basic shadows in the form. You can see I'm using a mixture of both the dark and the light coffee colours to really give that scale of colour through there. And I'm leaving these pops of white to exaggerate the highlights. So I'm going back in with some of the darker colour to give a little bit more detail around the eye. And I'm going to continue doing this across the whole form. I'm just starting in one area and moving along. I am working across the whole page though, rather than doing all of the detail in one area. So I will keep coming back to this. I'll be adding across the whole page. So I actually have a sculpture background, and that's one of the reasons why I like to work across the whole image rather than just finishing one area and moving to the next area. For me, it gives me a greater sense of the form if I work across the page. So here I'm adding some darkness, and instead of sponging off all of the colour, I'm just trying to create a bit of texture in the ear. So I'm not pressing as hard as I was before with the blotted tissue. Just going back in with some more of that really dark coffee, and really just trying to pick up those deep cracks and crevices to just create a little bit more of a 3 dimension to the form. I found that the area was just a little bit too wet in where the tusk met the trunk of the elephant, and so I just went back in and sort of tried to dab out some of that in the hope that I could work back into it with a little bit of more detail after I dried it out a bit. So I've got the hairdryer out. Although it's a hot day today, the coffee isn't really drying as quickly as, say, watercolour would, so it just needed a little bit of help. And with it being dry, some of those darker lines are staying a little bit better because they're not bleeding into the paper. So this is the end product. I think it turned out pretty okay overall. If I did it again, there's certainly a few things I'd change. I'd start with a lot lighter shades to help with the building up process, and I'd probably use the hairdryer a couple more times in between the layers just to add a little bit more detail. I think I'd also leave a little bit more white area. I think the areas where you have that stark light to dark contrast are much more impactful. So being mindful of this at the start of the drawing probably would have been a better idea. I'm really interested to hear what you discovered in your exploration of the coffee to watercolour, so please do leave your comments below. This has been the Creative Cure to Boredom with Ellen Rose. I hope you've enjoyed the video. Till next time, Ngā mihi nui.